Hi, everybody, and welcome to the 24th SF Doc Fest. The festival is taking place May 29th through June 8th in San Francisco at the Roxy Theater and at the Vogue Theater, as well as virtually in your computer screens, which is how our audience is joining us today. Hi, I'm Sarah Marie Flores. I program all the shorts here at SF Doc Fest, and I'm so excited to be joined here today with the filmmakers from our Short Stories 2 program. Welcome, everybody. Hello. Uh, I
Hello,
would,
thanks, Sarah.
I would love, thank you. I would love to kick things off by just asking our filmmakers to tell us who they are and what they did and why they did it. In a more eloquent way of saying, please introduce yourself, tell us the film that you're here with, what your role was, and what the genesis of the story was for you, or how did you become involved? And I'm going to start off with Stan. Hi, Stan.
Hi, Sarah. Thank you. Yep, my name's Stan Okamura. I'm a filmmaker based in Sacramento. Um, my film, it's a 10-minute short that you just watched called A Man Comes Down. I'll just mention everybody else who was part of the film too, because it's a short crew list. Matt Maxwell was the editor. Andy Richardson was the storyboard artist. Our titles were from Robbie Landsberg, and our colorist was Adam Cornelius with some audio mixing support from Cape Status. So um, the my film is an interesting one because it on its face is a really sad story, but I only decided to make the film when it became a really positive story. So as you saw in the film, my close friend had this catastrophic stroke. It was awful, and I sort of mourned his loss, and then this miraculous thing happened where many months later, after he was quadriplegic, couldn't speak, I saw the email that he wrote out to all his friends and family, and it was every bit of him was still there. And it was like this joyous event for me, and I think everybody else in his community. But I didn't think about making the film at that point because it was still so challenging for the family and everything. But when I went to go see him, he had gotten this eye-typing device where he could write his email. And he told me he had finished his screenplay. And um, while his family was working really hard for his recovery, after a stroke, there's a long recovery, but opportunities for recovery. Um, he's working hard for his own recovery as well, but his biggest focus was getting his film made that we had been talking about for years and he had made very little traction on. He finally, with the generative power of constraints, had been able to finish his screenplay and he was ready to take the next step, which it was just an incredibly inspiring moment for me and really wanted to tell that story.
It's beautiful. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm going to jump over to
Thank you.
Jackson. Welcome, Jackson.
Thanks, Sarah. It's good to be with you all. Yeah, so I made Penny here over the course of about a year and a half. I did the cinematography and producing and sound recording and directing, and then had an amazing editor in Brian Monroe Simpson and sound designer in Lon Bender and colorist in Ryan McNeil. And yeah, it began. I was working on a film with another 95-year-old woman in Los Angeles, and that film led me to Big Sur, where I was sort of doing some resetting and sort of thinking through what it meant to be an artist in a very difficult time to survive as an artist. And I met Penny, and she was doing just like a recitation of Hafiz for like a group of six of us, and it wasn't formal. We were just sitting on a lawn. It was really bright out, and I gave her my sunglasses, and we had this like immediate bond connection. And then she asked me to visit her house, which felt like a really generous invitation and not a very common invitation upon like right upon meeting someone. And yeah, I walked into this cabin that she's been living at for almost 50 years. She raised her three children and many of their children in, and many foster children in. And I just sort of saw this vision of a spirited, creative, artistic life that is very different than one that seems possible for people of my generation. And so immediately became curious about how she came to Big Sur, why literally everyone in Big Sur knew her and had some type of a deep personal relationship to her, and also what her connection was to specifically the poetry of Hafez, because she had memorized an entire book of his poems. And so it was sort of like good happenstance that her band, the Overlapping Halos, which she's in with Dave Monet and Edwin Zinga, hadn't yet played their first public concert. So I documented their first 3 public concerts, the first one at Henry Miller Library. And yeah, the film is sort of a reflection of her place in the community, my own longing for eldering and elderhood as someone whose grandparents have passed, and yeah, just being able to spend time with her. When I'd film, I'd actually stay in her home, and so it was just quite intimate and a chance for her to reflect on, you know, her relationship to poetry, but also her relationship to her body and aging, and what it means to sort of be alone at that nonagenarian phase of life. And she also she was a musical prodigy who had never done any improvisation. She had long been involved in the Monterey Jazz Festival. Her husband was the stage manager for 30 years. And so she had been around all these jazz greats, but was like, no, I play Bach, I don't improvise. And then just in the last 5 years, she started improvising. And so the film was the first opportunity for her to actually hear her own improvisation, which was a really special gift for me and for her to be able to share. And yeah, sort of my hope as a filmmaker is often to be able to reflect things back to the folks I'm collaborating with in ways that might not otherwise happen. And so yeah, it's been a really lovely multiple year journey of getting this film now to one of her favorite movie theaters in the world, the Vogue, which was thrilling for all of us to know it would be showing it for the first time.
It makes me so happy. I'm excited to get to go back to the Vogue. It's been a while. Well, thank you so much for joining us, Jackson. I'm going to jump over now to Maria. Maria, welcome.
Hi, Sarah. Thank you. I'm really glad to be here with everybody. Yeah, my name is Maria. I'm a filmmaker and also a musician. I'm right now based on Santa Cruz. But home it's East Bay, Oakland. It's where I feel like I'm from Brazil, and I have been here for almost 10 years. This idea of this film came up actually through a class that I was taking in UC. And I really want to bring my own personal story on it. And I thought about just like share these stories. I'm also a mother of a 5 years old, an immigrant. And so I just, what about we just share our stories, what is being a mother here, and how we can make humans be humans and not in our culture, you know, and how we navigate that. So I got together with some friends, Yara, it's one of them, and a dear friend also who actually just passed away, and also Thais, and we just chat about how it was to be a mother, and what are the challenges, and how motherhood has this powerful political change. We can actually make so much changes. And that's when I talked with Yara, and she was like, yes, I'm down to do that. And we talked for almost hours, 2 hours. And it was really hard to kind of like connected the other woman that we talk about it. I felt like everyone had a different, you know, experience. But what I share with Yara was really like, everything that was she was sharing with me was really like resonating with my own experience. So I found out that I wanted to just work with that, with Yara's story. And then I first initially used just her image that was like back and forth with the archival images. My film used just archival images. And I like this idea of like making a relationship with motherhood, with these organisms, this live organism, the body of the woman is this live organism. So I chose to use all those images who are like microorganisms images, archival images. They're actually just, there's no human images there. It's all come from nature. And yeah, that was my experience. I end up choosing to just use the archival images. I found that was really distracted to use the images, our own images there. Yeah, and that's
Lovely.
my own experience.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Hi, Yara. Thank you for joining us. Please introduce yourself and tell us, kind of your role within the film and like what made you want to come in and be a part of this.
Yeah, hi, Sarah. Thank you so much for having us here. Hi, everyone. Thank you for being here, watching these movies, and also being part of this conversation. It is so powerful for us as a generation to be able to see ourselves and reflect in our role in the world and see each other and see the other and be able to talk about it. And film is really a powerful tool for that. I'm an early childhood educator here in the Bay Area. I live in San Francisco, and I've been here in US for about 20 years. I'm also from Brazil. And I immigrated with my newborn child and my American husband, and it was a very just shattering experience as an individual. And so when the opportunity to be doing this storytelling with a close friend came up, there was no hesitation as to also the need of speak of the invisible. And as Maria said, it's very political. Our daily lives are very political as women, as immigrant, as student, and especially now too. So I'm very grateful for being part of this. And yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much. I mean, having you here is so important. Like having you all here, but I think we would be remiss if we didn't acknowledge just the state of this country in this moment, and that immigrants are under attack. Capitalism is destroying people's lives, and a lot of I think what we're seeing politically is being fueled by a need of the ultra rich to keep us under control. So, thank you so much for shining a light on that. And now, Peter, I think on the other side of the coin, we're definitely seeing that kind of evils of capitalism kind of taking away opportunities for folks. So can you just introduce yourself, tell us your film, your role, and why you wanted to tell this story?
Thank you. My name is Peter Rocco. I'm a filmmaker in the San Francisco Bay Area. And the film that I'm connected with is Taken for a Ride. I was the director, cinematographer, and editor for that. I first got in contact with the story because my friend and longtime collaborator, Mark Nasser, had met Marcelo at, I think it was like an art showing. And Marcelo had told Mark this, this story and this project that Marcelo has been kind of trying to get out into the world. And it immediately resonated with Mark and I, and we were drawn to that working class story of people that are kind of getting caught up in the gears of the economy. And so we just wanted to figure out how we could help Marcelo get the story out there. There was urgency, so we went and put this piece together. And I think Marcelo can talk more about where the story really comes from and how long he's been with it. Marcelo?
That's lovely. Thank you. Hi, Marcelo.
Hi, thank you. The idea of making a documentary film, well, first, I'm Marcelo Fonseca. I'm a Brazilian-born American citizen. I've been here for 41 years. I've been a member of the San Francisco taxi industry now for 36 years. And I always took a lot of pride for being a professional cab driver. And when Uber and Lyft came to town, we knew right away that we were facing unfair competition. And I became an activist. I went to a lot of meetings, and all the meetings throughout 12 years, all the meetings that I attended to, I felt that no one was listening to us. And I always believed in the power of a documentary film. And so this film, the idea to approach a filmmaker and have a documentary telling our story was born out of frustration with our elected officials, the regulators. Every mayor since Gavin Newsom has abandoned us. Our representatives in the California legislature have abandoned us. The media has covered it a little bit, but we never had an investigative report that could help us achieve a level playing field in the transportation for hire market. So I had the privilege of working with Peter. Peter, as he said, I was introduced to him by Mark Nasser, our co-producer. And so this film, they were so sympathetic to our cause. Through me explaining to them, I know they understood the pain, the suffering, the livelihoods of cab drivers being destroyed year after year, and still, after more than a decade, still being ignored. So this film is the result of Peter and Mark's understanding of the injustice that was brought upon us professional cab drivers.
That's lovely. Thank you so much for joining us and for sharing this story. I'm going to pivot now and chat with you about your films a little bit more granularly. And Stan, I would love to really just talk about kind of this constraint isn't the right word, but I'm going to say it because it's still early in the morning and I'm waking up. Constraint between kind of what James's reality is in this moment and his artistic ambitions. And just really like, because what I think is so special about this film is that you're telling this really personal story, but we're also like seeing this moment as filmmakers, as folks that want to tell stories, that there's already so many things stacked against us when we talk about what filmmaking can be. And how does that really come together in the film? And like, what are like James's ambitions for his own personal artistic praxis beyond this?
Yeah, so it's interesting what these constraints can be. So his constraints are so obvious, right? He's like very restricted with his body and he cannot speak. But I think if you Jamie will be watching his film with everybody, and I wish that he was taking this question for himself, but I think that what he might say about his constraints in life are, life kept getting in the way of him actually making these stories and telling the story, and so actually allowing him time to focus. The constraint in this way turned out to be a real benefit for his artistic life. It really and he says this line in the film, and it's so powerful. It was powerful. I interviewed him through email. When I read that, I'm like, yeah, that's the point here. Is that what it took for him to finish his screenplay was really being able to focus. But I also think that he's a person who the constraints really help him see more opportunities, and I think there's a lot of elements of this story that are about the empowering moment for technology right now. I think a lot of us as filmmakers are like really terrified by technology, especially like obviously AI is just coming for a lot of the elements of what we do, but this is managed to be a really positive technology story here. He just couldn't tell this story without this eye typing device, which, you know, this is fairly recent technology and it's getting better every day for him. So that's amazing. And then actually being able to tell the story in his own voice through an AI voice recreation. His hearing his voice again, he speaks in such a distinctive way, and for those of us who've known him, followed his career, one of the things he did was he spent time memorizing and reciting the I believe the entirety of the Odyssey. And so we're all very familiar with his voice. And so, you know, getting to hear him say this stuff in his own words, this is in many ways is a personal doc that I've helped package up for him too. So I think, yeah, there are many constraints here, but I believe, you know, really creative people, they need time, and time is kind of always just the biggest thing, and that's what he's got a lot of right now. But his creativity has never stopped, and so it's really just kind of spun that physical constraint into a really positive creative uh you know, boon for his life. So yeah.
That's so funny. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Sarah.
Jackson, I would love to dig a little bit deeper into like what your collaborative relationship was like with Penny, and how does this kind of speak to your overarching like practice as a filmmaker?
Yeah, I mean, I tend to only make things with people who really want to make things. And Penny is such a person. She's someone who will share poetry with a cashier at a supermarket just as likely as she will like at a formal performance. And I think in that, just being a ready audience member, getting to know like a little bit more about where that came from. You know, she was an educator at a outdoor preschool for a really long time in Big Sur, and also a Red Cross volunteer coordinator. So was literally like descending down ravines to save people's lives. And I think part of none of this is in the film. And so I think part of what making the film meant was trying to find what it was that she's contending with now, and really thinking about what feels, you know, because I think all have sort of tried and true stories that we turn to. But I think for me as a filmmaker, I'm really curious about how the sort of cinematic collaborative space can open up sort of new forms of reflection, or new utterances, new ways of self-presenting. And yeah, the process of finding like and sorting through what felt like the most present thing to her is sort of where the title comes from. As you just saw in the film, the credits end with the way that she answers the phone every time she picks up the phone, which is Penny here. And so yeah, I think part of what the challenge was like trying to narrow down all of this amazing biographical information into something that was much more just about presence and about place. Because I think part of what Big Sur, I've been thinking a lot about place, and how shaped we are by, yeah, our contemporary politics, but also just like the natural landscape, or the people who the community that we're surrounded by. And the woman who I was working with in Los Angeles lives a very isolated life in like the center of Hollywood, surrounded, you know, in a 300-person apartment building, but is quite isolated. And I think part of what was so moving for me in meeting Penny, and like hope inducing, and also you see it in the film, is just the level of community that she has and what that means for an elder. And I think, you know, there's so many topics like that feel very, very relevant politically right now to be exploring, and to be showing on screens. And I just don't think that elderhood is something that is necessarily treated with the same urgency, or particularly in light of the Social Security stuff that's happening right now. So I've sort of been sitting in that question of like, what do we, what can we do to support our elders, and also just to not just be supportive, but recognize sort of the incredible value their perspective has in our contemporary moment, that they've lived through a lot of different circumstances and that they've found ways to survive. And her way of surviving was really just awe-inspiring and beautiful to be around, and is something that I'm grateful to have witnessed and feel like I'll carry with me. And so I hope, yeah, that you all are able to sit with her too, and maybe sit with an elder in a new way after seeing this, because I think, like I said, we're used to certain stories being told, but it doesn't mean that there isn't sort of very alive issues going on in the lives of our nonagenarians, our grandparents, our great-grandparents.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much, Jackson. Maria and Yara, I would love to just chat a little bit about wrapping your head around using archival footage. I think obviously for a lot of us in the Bay Area, especially for those of us that were indoctrinated by Rick Frellinger, we're very familiar with like how special it can be to access storytelling through a lens that isn't rooted in the here, right? In terms of the imagery and iconography that we use. But Maria and Yara, like, what were your conversations around like how that imagery came together? Was there like a collaboration and how those melded for you? Like, what was that conversation like between you two? How the imagery came to come together with the very powerful storytelling behind it?
Do you want to say something first, Yara?
Well, I want to say that I have no part in that. It's all kudos to Maria's genius.
I can say, like, how did it feel to see it materialized for you? Yeah.
It just felt right. It felt very visceral. It felt like the one story that, you know, how are you going to represent imagetically that the one story that is so many people's stories, right? You can't really put one face to it, even though it's very, you know, it's very particular, is at the same time, in a way, very common, the invisibility of motherhood and immigration, so on and so forth. So it was a bit surprised. I was a bit surprised by the choice, but very pleased, in all honesty. I'm a big fan of black and white. So that was aesthetically also very pleasing to me. So yeah, thank you, Maria.
Thank you. That would not be possible without you. I think Yara said something that was really interesting. I think the use of archival image kind of speak itself with the idea of invisibility of motherhood, you know, and how we, most part of society, don't see this work, right, that mothers are doing. Like when you see, for example, any person who is successful, how many mothers were there, how many people was caring for that person to be successful, right? We don't think much about that. I love what Jackson even talk about it, right? Talk about our elders. Like, we don't think about how much work was to take care of those beings who actually made it, you know, they're there. Like, so I think the use of archival image in a way speak with that in a way too. And I found that was very distractive to use an image, although I think the body of the image of Yara in a screen, you know, a Black woman from Brazil, it's also political. Although I think that this is very important, her to appear in the end, like how it appears, you know. I think it's kind of like we are immersed in this like story, right? We are like really paying attention to those stories and trying to make connections with those images and make sense. But I think she also appearing in the end is also like a way of like, you know, like just highlight, look, this is a body, this is a person, this is a Black woman from Brazil. I think it's also important. But it was very organic. My choice of using it was like back and forth. I had the first cut was like going back and forth for her image and the archivals. And as I said, I just found that I was distracted, and I just made a choice, and I'm really happy that she liked it. Yeah, that was
It turned out beautiful.
yeah, thank you.
Lovely. Thank you so much. Peter and Marcelo, I'd love to just like talk about how like your film is a call to action, and like how did you Peter, I think as a filmmaker, like how did you kind of hear that call and like use that as a guide to how you put together the film? And for both of you, like how are you using this as a tool moving forward?
Yeah. What, just once I heard, from Marcelo, first from Mark and then from Marcelo, the story, it was just, it seemed so clear what was done wrong, the injustice of how all these people were screwed over, and the suffering that they're experiencing right now. So it just seemed like clarity, simple and clear. What, because I didn't think I had to add any kind of interpretation or other kind of approach towards it. So I feel like it goes more towards maybe a journalistic approach to it, of just tell the story as clear as possible, so that everybody could have the same reaction that I kind of had when I first heard it. So I think that kind of was, the guiding principle to how we were gonna, shoot it and tell it. There's also limitations. We're trying to put it together when everyone else is, when we all got our other jobs, and we're just trying to grab people when they have an opportunity to talk to them, and we can drive along with them for a little bit. So I think that's kind of went into the soup of, how the story was told. In terms of call to action, part of it is kind of like, I feel like I'll have Marcelo talk about that, but I feel like we're kind of like sitting on it for a little bit while it goes to this festival thing before, trying to get it to people who are either can put pressure on people who can make decisions, or the decision makers themselves can kind of hear the story again one more time, or yeah. So I have Marcelo talk about how he thinks we can use it.
Thank you.
Yeah, my wife is an American, and even though she's lived in San Francisco for more than 50 years, she's from Illinois. So when Peter first showed me what he had put together, we were in our hotel room in central Illinois. And to be honest with you, when I watched it, I bursted into tears because it's very emotional to me. Our story is about a city program that failed, and the city will not admit it. We never, in the film, we don't say anything against your right to have a choice when you order a ride home. Today, you can choose a traditional taxi, you can choose Uber, you can choose Lyft, and you can choose Waymo. But as I say in my interview in the film, why is it that only us cab drivers pay to have access to your business? And the film is so compelling to me. It's so emotional. And I like to share it with our regulators, our representatives in the California legislature, with Mayor Lurie. And I hope this time they will listen to us. I hope they will look at this human tragedy that's been going on since 2010. So my goal is to bring more awareness to them, more attention, sharing the film with them. And hopefully in the future, I would like to get a grant and tell the whole story in an hour-long documentary. That is my goal. I have already written a 35-minute storytelling narrative since the genesis of a taxi permit to the situation in which we find ourselves today. So that is my ultimate goal. It's to tell the whole story, because everything, all the decisions made leading up to the Medallion Sales program, the positions taken while the Medallion Sales program was being carried out, and the lack of action since it failed in 2016 are nothing short of sleazy, immoral, unethical, and possibly illegal. So I would like to tell the whole story, everything leading up to the sales of taxi permit, the positions City Hall took while it was being carried out, and the lack of action since it failed. I really like to, in the future, if possible, to tell the whole story.
Yeah, and I mean, like you're saying, it could expand, and we could dive into all of this. One last point is that I feel like even though this story is just about what took place in the taxi industry, I feel like with the more disruption that's coming, with the more changes that are coming towards us, there's going to be many more people that find themselves in similar positions that the cab drivers are finding themselves in right now. And I feel like this is kind of a canary in the coal mine in terms of how is society going to respond to all these people who find themselves now, out of work.
Being pushed to the margins because of greed. Like, let's just say it. I think we're in every aspect of how we're working, right? Like if I am looking out my window at the Hollywood sign and I see how our industry is failing us. Unfortunately, that's all the time that we have today. Huge thank you to our filmmakers and subjects for coming and being a part of today. Can't wait to see you at the Vogue if you're able to join us. And a huge thank you to our audiences at home. We couldn't do this without you. So thank you so much for showing up. And I hope everyone has a lovely rest of your day.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Sarah.
y'all.
Thank you,